Welcome to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. KC Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. KC Cares is proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. I'm Ruth Bombigas. Research indicates that in schools, children have better long-term outcomes if the person at the head of the classroom looks like them. Today, Latino, Black, Asian, and Native American teachers account for 17% of all school teachers, but only 2% are Black men, while slightly more than half of the public school students are children of color. How can the situation be changed? Well, our guest today is working on that challenge through Brothers Liberating Our Communities, an organization he co-founded and serves as executive director. We want to welcome Cornell Ellis. Hi, Cornell. It's so great to have you.
Hi, Ruth. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
And we must say an award winner. What a great way to start. Share with us. I know earlier in the year, you were given a pretty cool honor and shout out by a local media publication.
Yeah. Startland News recognized me and my organization as a community builder to watch. It's really awesome to just even think about the title of the award, right, as Brothers Liberating Our Communities, and to be labeled as a community builder or as someone that's kind of started off on that journey towards equity, justice, and strategic change. It was a really great honor, and I was really excited to be around the other people, the other winners. I was actually nominated and received the most nominations of any of the other winners. And so it was just a really great opportunity to feel affirmed in the work that we've been doing.
That's tremendous. Well, let's get right to it. Let's talk about the work that your organization is and what you're really focused around. As we talked about, I shared in the introduction, statistics aren't great.
Right. Yeah, I really appreciate that frame because that's a lot of data that people don't know or that people don't realize and they don't even think about unless they kind of look like me, right? Or unless they're a person of color that are asking these types of questions. My organization works to increase the number of Black male educators inside of schools. As a teacher and as a student, I think I only saw one Black male educator my entire pre-K through 12 experience. I had one in my pre-K experience and none for the rest of the time. And then as a teacher, I saw, Black male here, a Black male there, but they often were relegated to very specific discipline-oriented positions or positions that didn't really give them the opportunity to sprout and be passionate about the content and the things that they wanted to be passionate about. And so this work became apparent for me, right? Like you also said in the frame, students are looking for and they benefit from teachers that have the same ethnic, cultural, and linguistic experiences that they do. And so when you put those two things together, for me, it became very apparent, right? Like, how can I get more people that look like me and look like my students into the classroom? So we've been doing that since 2016, mostly on three different fronts. We work specifically with Black male educators, running programming and professional development that specifically is suited for Black males and Black educators. We also work with pathway exposure, right? So we want to get young people as early as third grade interested in education, revolutionizing their education experience so that they actually see teaching as a viable option. The age-old adage, right? If you don't see it, you can't be it, right? And finally, of course, we work with school systems, school leaders, all people, right? That, because we know over 70, 80% of teachers are white women. Are over 90% of educators are white. So we have to work with those educators too, to be able to get them having tough conversations about race, tough conversations about equity and justice, and move the needle conversations around equity in their schools. And so BLOC is really starting to blossom, I would say, and to be able to have opportunities to be able to increase its footprint across the Kansas City educational ecosystem.
What was it in 2016 that had you say, I'm going to start a nonprofit and I'm going to change the landscape?
Absolutely. It was a great journey, Amplify was something that I founded or helped to found first. Amplify is a Teachers of Color conference here in Kansas City. One of my mentors at the Kauffman Foundation, from one of my very first days of teaching, would often kind of poke and pry and, what do teachers need? What do you need as a Black educator? What is it that you can think of that can help you stay in education for a lifetime, right? Because otherwise, we know that teaching is often a not sustainable work. And so Amplify was kind of the first iteration of, creating spaces, safe and brave spaces for Black and Brown educators to be able to come together, to have real conversations about real problems and to make real solutions from those problems. And so after Amplify, I started to meet some of these national, people that were doing this work, a really strong network of people that had started to come to Amplify and had started to hear some of the work that we were doing for teachers of color. And so I ended up in Philadelphia with another mentor of mine. His name is Sharif El-Mekki. And Sharif El-Mekki had founded an organization there called the Fellowship, which was an organization that focused on Black male educators, and they were having a national Black male educator conference. So me and 5 other guys from here in Kansas City, we went to Philadelphia to go to this conference, and I sat down in a room of 1,000 Black male educators from across the country. And it was the most powerful experience I had had in education up until that point, to be able to be surrounded by like-minded individuals that were all so unique, but all also have the same type of plight, the same type of vibration, the same type of experience inside of the school systems, and the same type of passion and fervor to fight for change. And so, after coming back from Philadelphia, we knew that Kansas City had to have a version of this type of work, because Kansas City is a very unique place when it comes to the landscape, and especially the educational landscape, how there's a Kansas City public school system, but there's also a ton of these surrounding satellite school districts. And what we'll see here in Kansas City, there may be a Black male educator, or maybe there's 5 in a district, but they're at 5 different schools and they don't even know about each other, right? Because they're isolated, or because they haven't had the opportunity to find a common space to meet up. So we just kind of started that way. Let's just get guys together. Let's just get guys monthly on a happy hour to, talk about their issues, have a few drinks with guys that are struggling with the same things. And we've grown from there.
That's pretty amazing that from an initial kind of a conference, this has blossomed into an organization. But it's tough to build an organization. How did you go about it? What were the things or the other people that helped you create a nonprofit and keep it going?
Yeah. We'll see. Fingers crossed. I definitely have a strong network of people around me that has contributed to the success or the early recognition of the work that we're doing. Corey Scholes is the mentor over at the Kauffman Foundation I mentioned earlier. She's such a great advocate and ally for the work. And my co-founders, Spencer Hardwick, who is the chief of staff at TFA, Jeff Schaefer, who is a executive director now at City Year, Gaston Woodland, who's a teacher in Houston, Texas now, Bakari Uku, who's a PhD candidate in London, and Vincent Gunnels, who's a 20, 30-year educator in the Kansas City Public Schools. These were kind of the guys that came together. I never forget it. We went to Brown and Low in North Kansas City on the River Market, and we rented a room out, and we sat and kind of hammered out the name and hammered out this idea of what theoretically and philosophically our organization was about, right? And so from Corey kind of giving us the opportunities to see what the potential was and to be exposed to these types of other people that were doing the work, and then connecting us together, and from all of us kind of putting our heads together to creating a brand, I guess, or creating a name for the work that we're starting to do. And then it's just, my old football coach would call it stick to itness, right? Like just kind of grinding it out. Our very first BLOC meeting back in 2016 had 3 people at it. There were 3 Black male educators in the room, and we had a great conversation, right? And those 3 guys have come to every single BLOC event since. Our Black Educator Party, Black Educator Social this Friday is sold out. We have sold 100 tickets for people that would like to come and just kind of hang out with the block, have some drinks and celebrate Black educators. There'll be live music and, just like a relax and let your hair down. Congratulations, you made it a full semester, right? And so, God, it's such a combination of a really great team around me, really kind of sticking to the work and being really dedicated to the grind. And then like listening to the people, right? And like being responsive and informed about what people need and what teachers want. I'm a curriculum head. I love instructional coaching. School leadership was not really my cup of tea. That's why I'm a nonprofit leader instead. But I love working with teachers, working with students, working with mid-level leaders, being in schools and then being able to leave, right? Working with curriculum, working with this idea of like systems change. So there's a lot of different components and factors. I'm still growing and learning how to be a business owner. It's really difficult to kind of switch my brain from being an educator to being a philanthropist, being a fundraiser, being a spreadsheet maker and a budget balancer, right? Like governance has definitely been a very steep learning curve, but I have a fantastic board, governance board with Jeff Schaefer, Charles King, the executive director over at Kansas City Teaching Residency. Mary Esselman is on my board. She's a longtime friend of mine, and Jason Strickland and Spark Bookhart, two other really strong Black male leaders and organizers from around the city. So just a ton of shout outs, a ton of love and listening, and a ton of work to be able to get to a place where, like I said, we've been, written about or mentioned in 9 articles or 9 pieces of media in the last 6 months. And that's just truly a blessing.
Well, you're rocking the boat and you're getting out there and your voice is being heard. I want to go a little deeper into exactly what BLOC is doing. Tell us about programmatically. What do you do to try to knock at that door and open it for those who are Black men and already in education, but also those who want to come into it, or you want to encourage them to come into it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of different fronts that go into it. I think initially, like we said, if you want to increase the number of Black male educators in schools, you have to retain the ones that are currently there. And so from the very beginning, like you heard, we would just do kind of like the whole first year, we just kind of did social meetups. Once a month, we would come together, have a few drinks at a happy hour, just kind of start to build the network. From those social meetups, we started hearing and talking about real systematic issues. Guys show up at 5:00 on Thursdays with a lot on their shoulders and a lot on their mind and a lot that they've been dealing with. A lot of it specifically because of their identity and what they bring to the classroom or what they bring to the school environment. And so being a school leader at the time, right, being an instructional coach, being a person that was working on these types or thinking about these types of things, I started to curate professional development that started to address a lot of the needs and issues that we saw some of our Black males just bringing to the table at happy hour. And so from that, what we've seen develop is like a calendar, a professional development that addresses, pretty common, like it's a pretty similar calendar year after year, pretty similar topics. Our next upcoming one, well, I'll go over the full calendar with you. This past year so far, the types of topics that we've had. In September, we focused on effective communication. So how do we, as Black male educators, step into a school building and have effective communication with ourselves, with imposter syndrome, or trying to figure out how I'm going to have a conversation with my administrator by not being labeled as overly passionate or the angry Black male, and how am I going to have conversations with my student coming from a place that they come from while still keeping a professional distance, right? Like these are very unique challenges that a boy from the hood like me has when stepping into a new professional school building or a school setting, right? So effective communication was the first one. The second one we worked on was monotony to the money, is what we called it. How can you diversify your funding streams as an educator? We know that educators don't get paid enough. That's a fact. As male educators, we're often kind of tasked with taking care of our family, call it a patriarchal society, whatever you want to call it. We're often the ones deemed with bringing home the bacon. And being a teacher doesn't bring home very much bacon, right? And so as Black male teachers who are coming from systemically underprivileged and oppressed societies, it's more than just bringing home the bacon for our family. We're often seen as like the pillars for our community or pillars for extended family as well. And so, yeah, I get you don't want to be a teacher because it doesn't make enough money. That's kind of this strong tension that we see often pulling. So how can we start to give you ideas or we brought in some speakers that are authors, web designers, music producers, taking their educational talent and then using it to make money in other ways, tutors, mentors, right? BLOC offers supplemental opportunities for you to put a few extra dollars in your pocket over the course of the year so that you can feel like you can still be a teacher and support your family, right? This next professional development that we have upcoming in February is social and emotional health. So as Black men, we're often, again, not just the pillars of our communities financially, but emotionally and physically as well. So we need to sit down sometimes and have a check-in too. How are we doing? Let's have a safe space with just Black men in the room to be able to actually talk about my emotional state. It's the middle of the year. I'm dealing with secondary and primary trauma. I just had a new baby, right? Like, I'm struggling, guys. I need a hug. We bring in a therapist. We bring in some workshops and exercises for guys to take away tools, looking forward to the spring of how they can continue to be the best educator that they can for their family and for their kids, right? So that's how we create specified affinity-based development for Black male educators to help them just kind of start to tip of the iceberg, sharpen their skills as educators. We're looking forward to next year creating cohort memberships where Black men are actually becoming BLOC members and indulging on more specified, more rigorous scope and sequences around more technical skills, data-driven instruction, literacy, math instruction, so that we can kind of start closing these gaps around where we see teacher ed programs not closing gaps, right? We see teachers, Black male educators, and all educators that come into school buildings and need more technical skills. And it's not always the district doesn't have the capacity always to provide enough PD to be able to get these teachers what they need all the time. As Black male educators, as a Black male organization, we're going to say, come on into Academy A for the BLOC. And by the time you graduate from our cohort, you're going to be ready for mid-level leadership in your school building.
You have a robust calendar of
Yes.
all kinds, and you're touching so many different aspects of it. We're talking with Cornell Ellis. He is the founder and executive director of BLOC.
The BLOC is hot. That's how I like to say,
The
Ruth.
BLOC is hot. Brothers Liberating Our Communities. How do you guys, you are guys, so I can use that as a term.
Yes, we identify as males, yes.
How do you, fundraise? I mean, do you charge folks? I mean, you're at one point you're trying to bring in as many folks as you can.
Right.
And you don't want a barrier, but at the same time, you got to run an organization and run programming. So what's that look like for BLOC?
So, yeah, I mean, you heard me say that, I think if you would have asked me 5 years ago what a nonprofit is, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. I wouldn't have been able to answer this question. I think that's been some of the biggest learning curves for me, is trying to figure out how to run a business, how to start paying my own salary for the first time this year. And that's a big win and step for me, right? Mostly through foundational support, through grants and organizations like the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, one of our greatest supporters. Yes, shout out to them. School Smart KC is one of our supporters. Really appreciate all the work that they have put in and the belief and the support. The Health Forward Foundation is a supporter of BLOC this year. And let's see, I hope I'm not missing anybody, but that would be bad, right? But at the same time,
they'll forgive you.
They'll forgive me. At the same time, we know that organizations are not sustained through philanthropic organizational support, right? And so we also know that in our dream, no Black male educators should have to pay for the services that BLOC can provide for them, or that BLOC is providing for the community. So our financial sustainability model really includes a lot of grassroots funding from people that are listening to this broadcast right now. If you sacrifice or change in one coffee per month, $5 a month for the BLOC, that's $60 a year, and you can directly support a Black male educator right now. I like buying Black male educators dinners once a month. I like buying Black male educators small gifts around Christmas time and around the holiday season. I like being able to provide Black male educators with the resources and things that they are buying out of pocket for their classrooms, whether it be notebooks or crayons or a set of reading materials, right? I like to be able to say the BLOC can cover those things, and small contributions from people like you can help support directly Black male educators and help support the BLOC. I think even larger than that, we think about school districts and school systems that have invested in their Black educators or in the Black male educators that are in their building. And so if you say the 4 Black male educators in my building are important to me, I'm going to allocate money in the budget to become a partner with BLOC so that my Black male educators have access, our BLOC members automatically, and my school gains access to all the resources that BLOC provides, right? I just kind of talked you through the programmatic aspect of what BLOC does directly for Black male educators. Like I said, my wheelhouse is in curriculum and instruction. I love doing professional development. I love coming in and working with instructional coaches and doing thought partnership with mid-level leaders to be able to create systemic and structural change inside of school buildings. We've done that work with a few different schools around the city this year, or in the past couple of years. This year, we're focusing on AFIA is going to be one of our partners, the Academy for Integrated Arts. We're really looking forward to going in and working with their mid-level leaders, with their principals, with their superintendent on creating these types of programs and creating the types of work that invest in the retention and the recruitment and the sustainability of Black educators, right? And all of that comes with a cost, of course, and it all can be invested in the future of the diversity of Black educators in Kansas City.
Well, I don't want to be remiss in sending people to your website or not sending them. It is
the BLOC, BLOC, KC.org. THEBLOCKC.org. I think people get mixed up because it looks like block with a K. So it's the BLOC, BLOCKC.org. You can see on there all of our past programming. You can see on there all of our upcoming programming. Take a look at our YouTube channel, the BLOC KC. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's, I believe, the future of education. Is going to be online. All of our resources, all of our PDs are going to be listed there. And again, when you become a partner, become a member of the BLOC, you have access to all of these wonderful resources, lesson plans, professional developments, public speaking events, conferences that all help push your school environment to give. That's what it comes down to, is giving all kids opportunities. I think that's kind of the crux of this work. I do a lot of work for schools and educators and Black educators. At the end of the day, we're doing this work for the next generation. We're planting seeds so that students below us can enjoy the shade.
I love that. What a great slogan. We have just a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to ask you, you mentioned, though, it's also for people who are in education who aren't Black.
Yes.
And doing, specifically programming in that light. How can a non-person of color who's an educator then benefit from some of the things you're doing?
Absolutely. They can contact me. They can email. You can contact me on the website, and you can get in touch with me about coming to your school or coming to work with you as a thought partner and thinking about equity in your school building, in your classroom. I am a third-party accountability partner for an organization called SURGE, Showing Up for Racial Justice, SURJ, and they are the white affinity group that's fighting for justice, right? I believe that it's important that these safe spaces exist for white people too, so that y'all can come in and have tough conversations with each other, ask tough questions without feeling attacked, without feeling guilty about thinking or feeling some of the things that you think and feel. Bias is a sneaky little virus. And unless you are intentional about weeding it out of your system, weeding it out of your conversations, it won't happen, right? It's like being on an escalator. Unless you're walking down the escalator, you're going to just go the way the escalator goes. And that's the way bias and prejudice works. And so if you're a white person and you're looking for BLOC to come in and support you or your school or your classroom, or even just come in and speak, I think it's extremely powerful for accomplices who are teaching Black and Brown students to bring in community members, bring in other educators from outside your school walls to be able to influence your students, talk to them about education, right? Those are all things that the BLOC provides. And again, always like a calendar of professional development or events, conferences that are always welcome for all.
You're doing amazing work. What is kind of in a nutshell, your goal, let's say, for the next year? Pandemic, post, maybe? Crazy? No,
not at all. I would like to retain 100% of Black male educators in schools in the Kansas City metro area and increase the number of Black male educators, increase the number of Black male educators in the Kansas City public schools by 30% over the next 5 years. That is the goal.
That's a big goal, but you're providing fabulous resources out there for everybody. And we would encourage folks to go check out your website.
Yes, please.
Take a peek at what you're doing. Be part of change and positive change.
Be intentional about it. Otherwise, a like on Facebook doesn't actually change anything.
Write a check, right?
Write a check.
Write a check and show up. It's the BLOC KC and Cornell. We appreciate the time that you've spent with us, and we wish you the best of luck in what you're doing.
Thank you, Ruth.
And keep moving it forward.
Thank you. The BLOC is hot. We're going to keep it there.
Thank you for joining us on KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, also a nonprofit, and we are proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation. If you'd like to be a guest on KC Cares, just like Cornell, or underwriting opportunities to support our work, please visit our website at kccaresonline.org and spread the love. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and Instagram at KC Cares Online. And you can catch us Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us on KC Cares.